Hey everybody, it's your boy VG Time back again with another deck profile. This time we're going over the yellow Krennic list that I was playing on the last video. This deck right here did okay. It's inspired by multiple other decks that is in the friend group as well as that I've seen online. It goes as follows. One of my friends plays Iden Yellow. And then I also was inspired by some of the blue Vader lists I've seen. And I decided to build this. So the first question that might come up is why Krennic? Well, I don't think there's anything that Iden does that Krennic doesn't do. That's the first thing, right? So let's look at the record Krennic. Krennic has this cool static buff that makes it so your guys are harder to deal with while defending after they already have damage with them. And also it hits harder when you're able to start swinging at your opponent. Iden, heals one or two life here or there, and that's kind of cool. But once you get to the backside, he also heals. He has the restore mechanic, so he heals too. He doesn't have like I super laser blast and I cleared 8 guys off the table and so I heal 8 life kind of heal. But over the course of a couple of turns, he's going to heal like 4 damage, right? Which is good enough for the most part to keep you alive. And he comes out a turn earlier than Iden. He's sturdier than Iden. I know Iden has the bubble, but if you're going against anything that's like Rebel, that doesn't mean anything because there's so much Saboteur that the shield doesn't really matter. If you're going against Imperial, they have a lot of ways of picking things off. And if you're going against Blue, Iden is prime takedown fodder, right? You waited till 6 to flip this card that's just going to get immediately yoinked. So you're not really worried about that. Him being a 2/7, it matters. That makes him very hard to get rid of with takedown. And then I have other ways of kind of protecting him. So that's why I think Director Krennic overall is a better leader. It's possible that due to my lack of experience playing with Iden that I have a skewed view of her, but that's why I like Krennic over Iden. Before we get too deep into this, I'm just going to make you aware of why the deck is built the way it is. 1, I don't build decks using cards that I don't own. So a lot of times people ask me about, and feel free to ask me these questions. I'm not against you asking me these questions. It's just so you understand why these cards aren't in there in the first place. So if I don't own a card, I'm not gonna put it into the deck. Or if I don't own enough copies of the cards for it to matter, I'm not gonna put it into the deck. So for instance, I have a copy of Boba Fett. I have a copy of Vader. That one copy will not go into any of my decks because you don't have enough. Once you get to the second copy, now that seems reasonable. You could put a 2 of in the deck that you could find it throughout the course of the game. In the case of this deck, I own 0 copies of Vigilance. So if you own Vigilance and you want to put it in this deck, that is perfectly fine. The cards I would take out if you own Vigilance and you want to put it into the deck are the 2 copies of Repair and maybe the Gideon Hask, or like the 2 copies of Cargo Juggernaut and the 1 copy of Gideon Hask, something along those lines, so you could play your Vigilance and you could have fun. If you have extra copies of Super Laser and Avenger, that's also fine. You can just, take out things accordingly. Last but not least is that I build my decks with my local meta in mind, and I also am only a locals level player. I know I have this YouTube channel that's been around for a while, but I'm not traveling for tournaments anytime soon. So I'm a locals level player. Maybe I'll play like, a different store showdown or something like that. But until we get like official like regionals and stuff, I'm not going to be traveling for any like 1Ks or 5Ks. So keep that in mind. The power level might not be enough to do that with. Again, the link is down below if you just want the deck list. Also, you could have just screenshot it while I'm here droning. But let's get into it. Idea of this is that you're going to want to, like in any other blue deck, control their board state until you get to Avenger at the top end, right? Avenger is a great boss card. You play it, you edict them, which means that you make your opponent choose a card and get rid of it. And then every time you swing, it keeps doing that same effect. It doesn't hit leaders, but by this time, their leader is probably already dead because he is a 9 cost. So you're not really worried about that. So how do we get there? The way we get there is by clever use of removal as well as Sentinel. So typically on your first turn, you have one of 2 choices. You can either start off with Inferno 4. If you do an Inferno 4, that's cool. That allows you to at least scry the top 2 cards of your deck and get to where you want to go. And by scry, I mean you get to look at them and choose to put them on the top or the bottom. And that happens on play as well as on defeat. That way you can at least dig until you get to what you want to get to. The reason why you would ever do the Infernal 4 openings if you're going against a deck that you know takes some time. So that'll be like your green ramp strategies or your opposing blue strategies. You know they're going to take a while. You start off with Infernal 4. You're not really worried about them pushing you in. If you're going against aggressive decks, though, your strategy changes. You are not playing anything on turn 1. You are going claim. You're just going to claim on turn 1 because your turn 2 helps to clear up whatever board they create. So if on turn 2 you charge to your 3rd resource, you're going to play a piece of removal. So your removal options on turn 2, Death Trooper, Power the Dark Side, or Waylay. Your job is just to delay the damage. So if they played, like, obviously there's better options than others. Power the Dark Side is the number 1 option that you want, because this actually gets rid of it. Death Trooper, if they have 2 toughness guys that came down, let's say they start off with a Viper Probe Droid, you could Death Trooper clear the Probe Droid. And then Waylay is there if you could read the play. So for instance, right, let's say you're going against Rebels. They started out with a Green Squadron A-Wing, but you claimed. It might be worth waiting to create the tempo for them to play the Wing Leader, put the counters on, and then Waylay the Green Squadron A-Wing to make them feel bad. So that's where like Waylay comes in on that turn 2. The other option is that you play the Cloud City Wing Guard. The Cloud City Wing Guard is a 2/4 Sentinel, so it kind of, in a way, it doesn't act as removal per se, but it's going to clog up at least 2 attacks. So they're going to hit him. He's going to go to a 3/1. And then what you get to do on the following turn is either swing into the 3-drop they made with the Cloud City Wing Guard, or you get to clear off the 2-drop at that point. On turn 3, so you're at 4 resources. Your job is to Chilson for at least 5. So let's go over to Chilson. So a lot of times I play this card, at least early on before people started really recognizing it. I was playing this card early on. This card is a house. You play it, comes down as a 6/6 if you have 4 blue cards in your hand, or a 5/5 if you have 3 or whatever. The trade-off to it is that you're giving a lot of information to your opponent, but who cares if they can't get through? Certain colors have a lot of difficulty getting through Chilson. If he's a 5/5 or a 6/6 Sentinel, there are a lot of times are reluctant to try to run into him or get through him. If he's a 6/6, he is immune to one piece of removal from blue, so they have to at least run into him and then play their takedown. If you're going against red, the most they could deal with to him with 1 card is 4 at this point in the game, which is like their open fire, and then they still have to try to get through him. And against green, they really just don't have an option. So that's why he is such a powerful card. You just play him. He basically ends the turn. Even if they spend their whole turn getting rid of him, you're fine with that. It ended the turn. So the other option is that you go with System Patrol Craft. This is for if they went space, right? So they went space. You did your turn 2 play, your 3 resource play to get rid of whatever, and then you play a System Patrol Craft, you lock down the space. Because again, most of the times there's nothing they're going to play that's going to get through the 4 toughness of the Patrol Craft that you didn't deal with on the previous turn. So then on the following turn, on your 5th resource turn, turn 4, that's where you get to be able to deploy Krennic. Depending on what your board state is and how ahead you are, determines what you play alongside Krennic. So if they had not cleared Chilson, and it's going to take them a decent amount of effort to clear Chilson, you could kind of flip Krennic right away, swing Chilson into their base or something like that first. If you swing Chilson into the base first, you're dealing 7, which is amazing. They have to deal with Chilson. If they don't have anything else on the board because they had to use it to deal with Chilson, you flip Krennic, you play next to him a Rugged Survivor that says, on attack, if you control a leader unit, you may draw a card. It has grit, 3/5. With the Krennic out there, if it gets hit once, it becomes a 5/4, which is something not to sneeze at, and that's swinging and drawing you cards. If they dealt with the Chilson on the previous turn, and they might have something decent out, then you have the option of combining Krennic with Bosk. So you can play Boss, you can clear off something small they might have left over. Boss stays out there hopefully. Now he's a 5, whatever remaining health he is. And then you get to start playing event cards on the following turn to start triggering his ability to deal 2 damage to a unit when you play an event card. And that's pretty powerful to help protect your Krennic and also to keep their board clear. Another option is to go with Syndicate Lackey. Syndicate Lackey is super strong. It's basically it's basically takedown with upside, right? And the last option is Gideon Hask. Gideon Hask used to be a lot more than what we have now as far as in the deck, but it went all the way down to 1. It says when an enemy unit is defeated, give an experience token to a friendly unit. So the general idea is that, he'll be out there, you'll be killing things, and you're going to be spreading experience all over the place. It just doesn't happen, though. You usually play him out there. He's a solid body. He's a 5/5. And you play him, and then if you're playing against blue, he gets hit with the takedown. If you're playing against yellow or whatnot, they're usually clearing them with a Syndicate Lackey. And if you're playing against green, he comes out on their barrage turn if they have anything left on the board that they could barrage with and just clear him off. So he usually doesn't live that much. So that's why he's the last option. But in the matchups like red, where he might live a little bit more, or if they use their piece of removal already, you could combine them with Gideon Hask and then start using your removal to start buffing Krennic so he swings for big numbers and it keeps him very safe, and you should be okay. So now we get to the 6 drops. We're looking at Cargo Juggernaut. Now, Cargo Juggernaut is a card that I play because, again, your boy can't afford Vigilance. So Cargo Juggernaut comes down if you control another blue unit, which you usually do because you have Krennic. You're going to heal 4 from your base. If you're following the formula, right, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, that should heal your base to full. Like, usually they don't have enough stuff on the table to truly pressure you to make it so that you have just, 25 damage on your base. Usually you're able to just play Cargo Juggernaut, and from playing Cargo Juggernaut, you're able to just heal back to full. One more thing, it is a 4/6 shielded. A lot of people sleep on that, but that means that Cargo Juggernaut could clear something and then put a bunch of damage on something else. Its 6 toughness is huge, and with Krennic's ability, it becomes a 5 after it takes at least the 1 point of damage. And now you can start transitioning from clearing their field back to their base. I was able to win a few games just off a Cargo Juggernaut swing, so don't sleep on it. Bounty Hunter Crew, we discussed that in the Palpatine deck about why I like this card. It's one of in this deck, even though it has far more targets than it did in Palpatine. But Bounty Hunter Crew simply returns an event from your drop to your hand, and it itself has ambush, so it's able to swing into smaller things. It's a 4/4, so you're not going to clear any 6 drops with it, but you could clear some 5s and most 4s and 3s with it without any real issue. Dooku is basically takedown, but for 1 less toughness, or what do we call life, hits 4 or less. But you get a 5/4 with a shield, so there's nothing to sneeze at. Removal with their body is usually better than just removal, so that's why we play the Dooku. Next card requires an explanation. I had no choice. Part of that's kind of true, right? So one of the things that determines my deck building is I don't want to take apart other decks that I'm playing to build a new deck. So I happen to have a few copies of this card. I had no choice, and I looked at it and it seemed kind of ultra mid. And if you play it wrong, it is kind of what I just said, like just super meaty. But when you play it right, or in the right shell, it's an amazing card. And this is one of those shells. So as mentioned, if you're following the game plan, you're clearing your board, you're doing good stuff. Usually you have some level of board presence and they don't. And you want to just take their entire turn away from them. Usually they are you're not playing this on, so first of all, you're not playing this on 7. If it's 7 resources, your primary play is to play a piece of single target removal, assuming that you kept your board at a reasonable rate. If you're not able to play a piece of single target removal, then you just progress your board state so that you can put more pressure on the following turn. Because if you're doing everything right, you're going to put a ton of damage on their base, and they should be 1 turn or 2 turns away from dying. So that's where I had no choice coming to play. So usually when your opponent is faced with something like that, they try to wall up. So they'll play some big sentinel, like Gladiator, Star Destroyer or something like that, plus another card. Or they try to clear 1 object from you or something like that while they play out a sentinel. If that is the case, and you need to push in for the last bit of that damage, you have two options. If they only have one card out there, you play Waylay. If they have two cards out there, you play I Had No Choice. This is usually your 8th energy play, and the reason it's your primary one is because, again, usually you're ahead. Super Laser Blast, of course, is an amazing card, but Super Laser Blast is symmetrical. So the opposite is I Had No Choice, which is asymmetrical. It only affects your opponent. So a lot of people see this, they go, oh, well, they could just replay the card. Well, if you have board presence and you playing this and it's the last turn of the game, you're winning the game just off of this card, while Super Laser won't allow you to win the game just off of it. But there are times where you're behind. So if you're behind, we of course have Super Laser Blast at 2 copies. You clear off the board, you reset everything, and then you follow it up with the Avenger, which we talked about in the beginning. In which case, you're able to pair Avenger with your single target removal to trying to keep their board clear and close out the game within 1 or 2 swings. That's about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll catch you again next time, and this is VG Time signing out.